It started with footsteps. Not the heavy kind that neighbors make when they're being careless, but light, deliberate ones. Too soft to be casual, too late at night to be normal. Claire lived alone in a small one-bedroom apartment on the third floor of an old brick building in Chicago. She was a grad student, tired, overworked, and always slightly on edge. Her apartment was quiet, cheap, and just far enough from campus to be peaceful, until the footsteps began. They came at 2 or 3 in the morning, always from the ceiling. She knew that the 4th floor was locked off. Had been for years. When she moved in, her landlord said the top level was condemned, unusable after a fire 2 decades ago. No one lives up there, he had told her. But someone was walking, slowly, across her ceiling. At first, Claire thought maybe it was an animal, rats maybe, but the pattern was too rhythmic. She recorded the sounds with her phone. When she listened back, she realized something strange. The footsteps stopped every time she turned on a light. She called her landlord. He checked the attic door from the main stairwell, found it still locked and sealed with a rusted chain. No signs of disturbance. He laughed it off and blamed her late-night imagination. That night, Claire stayed awake, all the lights on. Nothing. The next night, she turned the lights off again, and at 2:41 a.m., the footsteps resumed. They were slower this time, almost cautious. Claire pushed her bed closer to the center of the room and laid awake staring at the ceiling. The air felt heavy, like something was watching her. By the end of the week, the footsteps started, including soft thumps, like something being dragged. Then whispers. Indistinct, but there. She thought it was her mind playing tricks. Until one night, she heard her name. Claire. It was barely audible, but it came from above. She ran out of her apartment and slept in her car. The next morning, she climbed the stairwell to the 4th floor. The door was still locked, rusted shut. She walked around the back of the building and found the maintenance ladder. The hatch to the top floor was open. Inside was a scorched hallway, charred wallpaper peeled from the walls. Everything was still except the dust. There were footprints, small, barefoot, trailing ash. Claire followed them into what had once been an apartment mirroring hers. The layout was identical. She walked into the bedroom, her bedroom. On the floor, someone had drawn on the wood with charcoal. Her name, over and over again. She backed out slowly, heart hammering, and stepped on something soft. It was a mattress, burned, partially intact, and on it a photo. It was Claire, asleep, in her bed. The photo was dated 2 nights ago. Claire fled the building and never returned. Police found no one in the top floor, no camera, no prints, nothing. But when the next tenant moved into her old apartment, the footsteps returned. Father Marcus had heard it all during his 23 years at St. Agnes Parish. Affairs, theft, violence, addiction, human weakness in all its forms whispered through the wooden lattice of the confessional. But what he heard on a cold October evening would unravel his sanity. The voice was low, calm, male. "Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. I killed a man." Father Marcus paused. Murder confessions were rare, but not unheard of. He reached for the small notebook he sometimes used to jot down troubling patterns, in case a warning sign needed to be raised. "Tell me what happened," he said. "It was deliberate," the voice continued. "I planned it for weeks, watched him, knew his routines. One night I followed him into his home, waited until he slept, and I used a hammer. The air grew heavy. Father Marcus felt a shiver ripple under his collar. "Why are you telling me this?" Silence. Then, "Because I want you to understand what comes next." Before Marcus could respond, he heard the door to the confessional open and shut. He stepped out, looked into the church. Empty. He ran outside, saw no one. He called the police, reporting an anonymous confession. But with no name, no time, and no victim, there was little to do. That night, Father Marcus barely slept. 2 days later, a headline caught his eye in the local paper. "Man found murdered in home, bludgeoned to death." Details matched the confession. The name of the victim was Edward Hamlin. Marcus went to the police. They interviewed him, took the statement seriously, but he couldn't offer much. A week passed. On a Sunday morning, Father Marcus opened the confessional at the usual hour. Within minutes, the same voice returned. "Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. I killed another man." This time, the killer described the act with even more detail. A different victim. Same planning, same detachment. Marcus demanded a name. The voice only replied, "You'll know soon." The next day, a second murder appeared in the news. Same M.O. Father Marcus became obsessed. He wrote down every word he could remember, built a timeline, tried to decipher patterns. But something deeper began to eat at him. The voice sounded familiar. He listened to archived homilies, old recordings, even church choir tapes. He couldn't place it. But something about the cadence, the breath between words, it scratched at the edge of memory. Then one night, while organizing records in the rectory basement, he found an old photo of the church staff from 1997. A janitor's name, Thomas Reeve. It clicked. The voice. It was his. But Thomas had died in 2019. Suicide. The obituary was clear. Marcus dug further. Police report confirmed it. Thomas hanged himself in the church bell tower. No signs of foul play. Marcus stopped sleeping. The final confession came 1 week later. Same voice. "Forgive me, Father. This will be my last visit, but not my last act." Marcus stepped out and once again found no one. He collapsed into the front pew of the empty church. It was nearly midnight. He looked up at the large crucifix above the altar. Blood was dripping from Christ's crown. He ran. To this day, Father Marcus lives alone in a monastery 2 states away. He does not speak, does not celebrate Mass, does not write. He simply stares at walls. When asked why he left St. Agnes, he always gives the same answer. The dead know how to speak. The listing had been vague. Quiet cabin, remote, no neighbors, perfect for writing or solitude. Emily didn't care about the details. She had one goal: get out of the city, away from the noise, and finish the final chapters of her debut novel. Her editor had stopped calling. Her agent had started calling too often. She needed space, silence, and most of all, distance from the life she felt slipping out of her control. The cabin was 2 hours north of Asheville, up a twisting gravel road with no signage. Cell signal died halfway there. It was mid-October, and the mountains were drenched in red and gold. When she arrived, the cabin looked older than the photos suggested. Weathered wood, warped porch, a roof that bowed slightly in the middle. But the key was under the mat, as promised. Inside, it was sparse but clean. 1 bedroom, a kitchenette, old stone fireplace. No TV, no Wi-Fi. Just what she needed. except one door wouldn't open. It was on the far side of the living room, heavy, painted over several times. No knob, just a keyhole. Emily assumed it was a storage closet or maybe a maintenance room. The Airbnb owner hadn't mentioned it, and she didn't bother to ask. But as the days went by, the door bothered her. She started hearing noises. At first, she thought it was wind. The cabin groaned at night, the trees scraped the windows, and the fireplace cracked loudly when the temperature dropped. But this sound was different. Scraping. Slow. From behind the locked door, Emily pressed her ear to it. Nothing. The next morning, she examined the door closer. The paint around the edges was chipped, like someone had tried to force it open. That night, she dreamed of the room. In her dream, the door was wide open. Inside was a child's bedroom, toys, a small bed, wallpaper with clouds, and something in the corner, tall, thin, with fingers that brushed the ceiling, watching her. She woke up, gasping. The door was still closed. By day 4, Emily was unraveling. Her laptop crashed twice. The firewood had gone damp, even though she'd kept it covered. And every night the scraping continued. She messaged the host using the emergency contact form, asking about the locked room. No reply. On day 5, she snapped. She found a flathead screwdriver in the kitchen drawer and jammed it into the keyhole. The lock clicked. She pushed the door open. It wasn't a storage closet. It was a staircase, narrow, steep, descending into darkness. She hesitated, then grabbed her phone for light and stepped down. The air turned colder with each step. At the bottom was a small concrete room. Chains hung from the ceiling. There was a bed frame bolted to the floor, and on the wall, written in red, "I never left." Emily spun around, and the door slammed shut above her. She screamed, slammed the walls. Her phone died. When police found her car abandoned a week later, they assumed she'd gotten lost hiking. No one checked the locked room. The next guest didn't stay long, said they heard footsteps below them at night. The host apologized, offered a refund, and repainted the door. Somewhere beneath that cabin, Emily is still waiting, and the door, once again, is locked. Weeks later, the property was delisted. The host stopped responding to messages. Online reviews vanished. Locals whispered that the cabin had always been cursed, that a family vanished there in the 70s, that once you went in, something watched you, learned you, reflected you, and that the room in the basement didn't just hold people, it remembered them. In a town 20 miles south, a woman named Anna bought an old dresser at a flea market. Inside, she found a handwritten page from a novel with the name Emily Wren at the top. The story? A woman rents a cabin to escape her past and discovers a door that shouldn't be opened. Anna didn't sleep that night, not because of the story, but because taped to the back of the page was a photo of Anna asleep in her bed, taken the night before.